Hi, this is Tom, Junkie XL, and welcome again to Studio Time with Junkie XL. Who else? So in this episode, I wanted to give you an introduction to my modular synthesizer wall here, what is in there, where it comes from, and why I have it. So this is also a video to give props to the people who built this stuff. These are not big companies like Native Instruments or Spectrasonics. Sometimes this is like a one-man operation. Sometimes it's a slightly bigger company with 4 or 5 employees. But it's all very small. Usually when you order a module, as fast as you can get it, it's sometimes 2 to 4 months, and sometimes it takes a year and a half. But it's always worthwhile the wait. And these modules are made with such precision and with a lot of love, and it's not a super big community, but it's a really great community. So the cases that everything is built in comes from synthesizer.com. And a lot of the modules that I have come from synthesizer.com. Now, synthesizer.com is a company that gives you, within a good budget, really good sounding modules that are based on the MOOC standards. You can check them out at synthesizer.com. David Eric is a designer, he's the owner, really amazing guy, and he does it with a lot of love and passion. So let me show you a couple of things that I think are key that I have here in this side of the rack that comes from synthesizer.com. So here I have a sequencer that we will be using in one of the tutorials, and I actually have 4 of them. So there's one over here, there's one over here, there's one over here, and one over here. And you might ask yourself, why would you even want to have so many of those sequencers? Well, the interesting thing is that if I take this, let's just take this oscillator, if I switch it on, you have the speed at this point, but if I make the speed so high, it actually starts to turn into audio. You see, it's flickering so fast right now that it almost turns into audio. By adding extra voltage to it, it almost starts to work like an oscillator, and you can really make interesting sounds with that. So that's why I have a few of those. And you will see that in the modular synths for expert video later on, when the whole wall is packed with cables. It's great to have multiple sequences so you can make different riffs and different bass lines that you can combine with one another. So those are the sequences. And then there are a couple of modules here. I want to point out this thing. It's the quantizer bank, and then there's one over here. I will mention this in one of the tutorials. It's basically taking the raw voltage from the sequencer and actually quantizes it to notes that you would find on the keyboard. You can do it without the quantizer, but it's very tedious to get the tuning right. But you will see that in the video. Then there is another sequencer here, right here and right here. And the interesting thing about this is that it basically allows you to, let's see if I got it set up the same way. So it allows you to play 3 notes at the same time and change the voltage. So with this module, and there's one over here too, you could actually program chords. So you could go from C minor to F minor to G minor, back to C minor, whatever chords you want. And you can trigger that with the shift input, and that way you can go from chord to chord to chord to chord. So it's very interesting to use that. Then on the bottom here we find a lot of oscillators. There's one over here, one over there, one over there, one over there, one over there, one over there. You also might ask yourself, why do you have so many oscillators? And there are way more on that side. Is that the cool thing about an oscillator is that, yes, it's also producing a tone. So if you want to create a really fat bass sound, you might even want to use 6 of them. And I'll actually show that in one of the videos. But if the setting on the oscillator is so incredibly low, it actually starts to work like an LFO. And you need a lot of LFOs in a modular synth to modulate signals, to work on the filters, whatever you want to do with them. So it's important to have a few of those. Now let's look at another brand that is on this side, and that is the company that's called Moon. And Moon comes from Germany, and the designer is Gert, and he's a super, super lovely guy, incredibly smart, and he makes really, really high-end modular stuff, like probably, you know, in the top 3, 4 stuff that is around. And I have a bunch of stuff that he made. One of the things here that we will showcase in one of the videos is the trigger sequencer. And there are 4 of them, and you can program your own rhythm. And if every time when the cursor jumps over that, it will just give like a little spike, a trigger info, and that you could send to an envelope generator, and that will create an envelope every time when that little spike happens. It's a very, very handy machine. Here we see a quad sequential voltage source, which is technically something similar than this, even though the synthesizer.com is very much modeled on the classic Moog sequencer, whereas this sequencer is a complete design by Gert of Moon. And it's really wonderful. It works you know, as one big sequence, or as 8 individual sequences, or how I have it set up 2 times 16 at this point. And you can create really complex melodies with that, because there are so many steps if you want to use them. Another section that you see here, and this is again synthesizer.com, is like all the MIDI stuff that comes in. Obviously a modular synth doesn't have MIDI at all, so you need a MIDI interface that, you know, will allow you to play stuff from Cubase into this system, and then it will spit out a gate signal, a pitch signal, a trigger signal, or you can provide the whole wall with tempo information coming from Cubase. And at this point we see that all the sequences are running in one tempo, and that's because tempo is coming in from Cubase into MIDI, and therefore everything is running. If I were to unplug this, everything is going to stop. If I'm going to plug this back in, it's going to run again. So that's why I use MIDI. Now let's move over to this side of the rack. Here we have, let's go over here for a second. We have an oscillator here. It's a very unique oscillator. It's made by Synthetic Sound Labs. It's the Ian Fritsch double-decker ultrasonic VCO. And you can make really amazing sounds, and you can do a lot of really cool wave shaping with these faders, and create tones that are not necessarily standard sine wave or a saw wave. It's very nice to make experimental sounds. Then the rest of this section here, we see a lot of Moon again from Germany. So right here we have an oscillator, and here we have an oscillator, and you see there are a lot of extra functions that this oscillator offers you. All kinds of different waveforms at the same time. You can mix them quieter, louder. There's more waveforms you can select here. So one oscillator gives you all those different tones at the same time, and I've got 2 of them, and they're very rich in sound. The other thing that we see right here, this is also really interesting. It's called the reversible modulation matrix. And basically what it does is that you can select one, you can put information in 1 to 12, and you can output it 1 to 12. So almost nothing happens if that is the case. But you can constantly switch the input source to any output source. So you could say output 1 is going to 1, but you could also say it's now going to 3, or it's now going to, what is it set to, 7. So this allows you, if you have complicated modulation info going on to all these different modules, by switching this around, you can change up the sound instantly, very drastically, and you can always go back to what you had, instead of unplugging all the cables and doing all these things. You will see this in full action in the expert video of the performance. Then if we move over a little bit, we see more synthesizer.com oscillators. Usually the ones that sit on the top I use as LFO, so I can really easily drop a line down and just modulate whatever I need to modulate. Then we see a couple of really interesting modules here. Oh, I want to explain this thing right here. This is what we call the multiple. And the multiple is something that you need a lot in your modular system because you see it's quite a lengthy system and you need to patch sometimes from there to there. Even though I have set it up and thought about it a lot, like what the infrastructure is, I took a lot of modules out and replaced them somewhere else. And so there was a lot of thinking that went into it. But I'm really happy with the setup now. But sometimes, you know, you need to get to the other way and then the cable is short. So the multiple is good. You stick it right here and it means that the 3 connectors around it are now having the same signal as this. So I stick something in here and then I can go over there. So it's almost like a connector to expand it to the other side. It has another advantage too, is that let's say you have pitch information from your sequencer that needs to go to multiple sources at the same time. You just stick one in here and then you can keep patching it to the other sockets, and now all the other modules that are connected to this will all receive the signal from this sequencer just in one go. So that's very handy. Now let's look at another module, and this is also what we use a lot. This is made by synth. This is a really great company, if I'm correct, from Portugal. Pablo is the designer there. No, it's Spain, sorry. synth from Spain, Pablo. And these modules are super high quality. I have a couple of other things here that we'll get to. I want to first point out this is an LFO. So this is actually made to be a low frequency oscillator, whereas the synthesizer.com can be both. It can be a low frequency oscillator or a real oscillator, but these are built to be a low frequency oscillator. And now right next to it we have the frequency divider multiplier. And this is really interesting. So it means that whatever you stick in, you can multiply or divide by a certain amount. So this is handy with trigger information or with any voltage. It will divide it by half or multiply it by 2. So you can really play with that, with effects. So you would usually never run audio through this. This is to process voltages or triggers that need to go somewhere else to steer the sound of a filter, for instance, or a gate or an envelope. Again, we see some multiples here. And here we have a few modules from synthesizer.com, which is a signal processor. It basically allows you to gain the signal by 200% if you wanted to, but at the same time it can create an offset. And an offset is if you have a sine wave that is almost perfectly going like this, you could move that sine wave over so it's being offset towards another wave. You can create a couple of different things. Really interesting wave shaping if you were to modulate another module, but also you can put like sound out of phase, so it starts to sound wider. And there's a bunch of stuff you could do with that. If we go back here, then we go to a low frequency oscillator by Moon. There are 4 of them with different types of outputs, so you could have all kinds of different speeds. And you have all these outputs available. We have a gate delay. That is also interesting. So if a signal comes in to trigger a gate, you can run it through this module and say, like, you know, you should wait a little bit before you send that trigger. So you could offset triggers from one another. You can create really interesting effects, again, with filters or with gates that are being triggered. Then here we have another interesting module, synthesizer.com, gate math. So something comes in and then you have all these different options to split out that gate signal into 4 different outputs that do all kinds of different things. And you can program them by clicking on them. You could choose different configurations. There's some presets here that you can pick. A really interesting module to create more original sounds. Let's see. If we move down here, we see another modular builder, Paul Crisp, from England. He makes really amazing modules, really high quality. I have a lot of his stuff. It's really beautifully built and it sounds really good. And if we move down here, we see another really great company. This is from France, Modular, Sebastian. He's a great designer. All his stuff sounds really top-notch. The stuff that he makes is so sought after that the waiting list is incredible when you order stuff from him. I think I waited over 16 months for these modules to arrive, but boy, was it worth it. Then we see something funny here. And this happens sometimes in the 5U world, where a Eurorack module is actually being transferred into a 5U module. So this is actually the module MAFs, and that usually just lives for, it's from Make Noise, a really wonderful company that makes really experimental modules. They're somewhat hard to use, but once you get your head around it, the sound is incredible. So actually it is a Eurorack module that has been transformed into a 5U module. So it's very handy to have. Here we go back to core synth. We have a lo-fi machine. So this will, you can do sample rate reduction, sample bit crusher, if you want to call it like that. Here we see two filters from synthesizer.com. Here we see another Cobol oscillator by Moslab, Paul Crisp. Here we see also two filters, the Super Ladder. Here we see a bunch of mixers, and these are made by STG Sound Labs, and I actually have a lot of these. They actually sound really, really fantastic. And I have mixers everywhere over my system, so I could say, okay, 5 oscillators go into this, and then that signal goes to there, and I can treat that signal and do something with it. So very handy. When you see the live performance that I give with the modular synth and the expert one, you constantly see me reaching for these mixers to adjust like little levels or to fade something in or fade something out. Right next to it, we have two really good sounding oscillators by Paul Crisp. Then here I have a bunch of overdrives and the Devil's filter by Sound Labs, also really good sounding filter. These are my favorite envelope generators to go to. They're made by CoreSynth. I should really put in an order for 2 extra ones. They're so great to work with. They have the loopable mode, so once the envelope is finished, it starts again by itself. It's super handy, great for making experimental sounds. It's really good. Oh yeah, here we have our envelope generators by synthesizer.com. They're really snappy and really quick, so I use those a lot as well. And then here we have 2 really interesting modules by Synthetic Sound Labs, and this is the Ian Fritz 5 pulsar. And basically, you could do some really crazy wave shaping with it and really alter the sound. And the best results you get when you just put in a straight sine wave, and you could do all these really crazy harmonic stuff with it. I use that a lot as well. Here we have a Moon MIDI interface for extra MIDI information that I might need. Here we have 2 modules from synthesizer.com, which is a panner or a fader. If it's set to pan, you basically can pan the sound from left to right or fade, and then it goes in and out. And you can automate that with control voltages. Here we see synthesizer.com fixed filter bank. This is modeled after the filter banks that is made by Moog. I'd like to add to this that there's a plugin that's called the 914 by Audio Damage that sounds really fantastic, and it's based on that. So check that one out if you get a chance. Another fantastic brand is Cynthia. She lives in LA, and she designs the Zero oscillator. It's a very unique oscillator, great for creating FM sounds, has a really unique character to it. Here we see another ADSR or envelope generator by Paul Crisp. Then we move over here. Now we get to a couple of modules that are interesting. This one over here, this one over there, and this one over here were ordered from a website that's called SynthCube. And SynthCube is basically a group of people that build modules that are designed by somebody else, but they build them and they sell them collectively through that website. It's a great website. They offer really high quality products, usually of things that are not being made anymore, or some designs that are so unique that never went into production because there was no commercial value for it. And these guys put the effort in to build things that are really unique, and you buy them from them. You could also use that website to buy module kits, so you could actually put it together yourself. You get all the parts, you get the prints, you get everything, so you can make it yourself if you're into that. So that is that brand. Then here we see some more oscillators that I use for LFOs or for an oscillator, whatever I choose to do. And here we see the dedicated synthesizer.com LFO, low frequency oscillator, with a lot of really sexy functions to do stuff with, to alter your sound. And there's another one over here, so I've got two of those. And then finally we get to the Dutch pride in this story, and that is Rob Hoordijk. He's a Dutch designer. He's very well respected in the 5U community, and he makes this really amazing sounding modules. And I found this one online, and I'm still talking to him to find the right spot for him to build something for me uniquely. Which is going to happen at some time, anytime soon. Then here we have a quad VCA built by Paul Crisp. And then I want to point out these modules right here. Not only do they look absolutely stunning, but they're absolutely really great sounding. Analog Craftsman, really wonderful company. And if I have to compare it, it really reminds me of the ARP 2600. It has like a bite to it and an aggression to it that's really good. Here you see an older module in the black outfit, and these ones are in silver. They just look so phenomenal in silver. This is really great too, this module made by Analog Craftsman. This is a module that allows me to use the modular synth in conjunction with guitar pedals, because guitar pedals only need 100 millivolts input to operate, but most of this wall is 5 volts or even more. So we're talking, you know, a good 50 times more than is actually required. So this module will bring the 5 volts down to 100 millivolts. It comes back and you gain it back up so you can use it in your system. In the expert tutorial, you see me using these Moog pedals that are then connected to this thing, and then it goes into the modular wall. Again, we get to core synth, the filter, the low pass filter MK2. It's a really good sounding filter, like really, really good. And there's another small company, I believe his name is Phil, from I think Chicago. His company is called Mega Ohm Audio, and he makes really small modules. This is a filter, very sympathetic guy, and he takes his work like really serious, and it's a really funny sounding good filter. Then we go down here, and then we see MOSLab here, this whole filter setup and its oscillator. And this is like so incredibly well built. It's really modeled off the original Moog stuff. It looks almost the same. It has the same functionality. It's absolutely phenomenally good sounding. Then we have here an EFG Deluxe. With this module, this is made by Paul Crisp. You could, for instance, hook in a guitar, or you could hook up a microphone, and it will change. It will turn it into voltages that you can use for the modular synth. Here we see SDG Sound Labs, the Mancado filter, and this is really interesting because it spits out different filter information based on the degrees that you see here on the module. It basically means that it shifts where the filter is, and you can create really interesting stereo images and also really, really cool effects with it. Also, everything is controllable with control voltage going in and out. Here we see another filter made by Mega Ohm Audio. Again, my final mix stage where this is going into Cubase. We see more multiples. We see an 8-channel mixer by synthesizer.com. Here we see one of those other modules that is actually made for Eurorack, and this one is, if I'm not mistaken, Clouds. The module is called Clouds, and but it's made for 5U, so it's a Eurorack converted into 5U. I use this a lot, and this is also in the performance. Then we see another filter by synthesizer.com, and that more or less wraps it up what is in this rack. But what do you need to start? You need an oscillator, that's one. You need one filter, and you need an ADSR for creating trigger information, and you need a VCA. So technically, with 4 elements and a MIDI module if you want to use it in conjunction with Cubase. So those 4 or 5 you need, and then you have your little modular setup. What I would seriously advise if you look into this is look first for the cheaper brands to see if it's something for you. And a mini modular setup, you could get around $1,500, $2,000. You have a mini setup, you could really get going. So I would highly advise it. I hope you like the instruction videos that come after this. There are 3 or 4 of them, I think. And then including the expert where I do full performance when the whole wall is covered in cables. So I hope you like this episode and see you on the next one. Bye.